Okay, good evening. Welcome to
MathForKids number 106. Wow.
This is, you asked if we could do a logic puzzle tonight, so I came up with one, or I didn't come up with this one, but I thought what we'd do is study something called the three-hat puzzle. And this is a puzzle that's so famous it was actually written up in the New York Times newspaper. Can you believe that? Alright, so here's the puzzle. You can say it a lot of different ways. But let's say you have these three Lego figures, and let's say they're all super geniuses. And they were captured by these guys. Or maybe they're just friends with those guys and they wanted to give them a test. And they said, okay, you guys think you're so smart. We have 5 hats. 2 of them are blue, and 3 of them are red. You understand so far?
Yep.
And we're going to put these hats on your head, person number 1, 2, and 3. And you're not going to be able to see your own hat, but you can see other people's hats. So you understand that?
Yep.
So person 1 can't see their own hat, but they can see other people's hats. And then person 1's going to get a chance to guess, and they have to guess the color of the hat on their head.
They can't take it off and look at it?
No, they can't take it off and look. So if they know it, they can say it. But if they don't know, they have to pass. Okay, so I guess they're not really guessing. They have to, if they know what color their hat is for sure, they can say it, and if they don't, they can't say it. Okay? And if person number 1 doesn't know, then they pass, and person number 2 gets a chance to go. And if person number 2 can say it, then they'll say it. If not, they'll pass, and person number 3 will get a chance. Okay? You understand the game?
Yep.
Okay. So, here's what happens. These guys, whoever they are, with all their little swords and everything, come over and they put the hats on these people's heads. Okay, so maybe they did it like this. Okay. Or maybe they did it some other way. So we don't know how they did it. Well, except for one thing happens. They say, okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Person number 1 looks around. Remember, person number 1 can see the hats on 2 and 3, but not on their own head.
They can't whisper to person.
No, they can't, and they can't talk to each other or anything like that. And person number 1 looks around, and they're super smart and super logical and everything, but they can't figure out. They say, oh, shoot, I don't know what color hat I have. And person number 2 says, okay, my turn. And they look around and they say, oh, shoot, I don't know what color. But person number 3 goes, aha, I do know what color. And then person number 3 says the color of their hat. Okay?
Wonder how he
So
knows.
the question is, that's the question. What color was person number 3's hat? Pretty interesting. So this is a logic puzzle that's pretty difficult. So we'll try to figure it out. We have to figure out what information we learned all the way through. Okay?
So
The first thing we learned is with person number 1 looked over and saw the hats that person number 2 and person number 3 was wearing, and the only thing they could say is, I don't know what color my hat is. So let's see what they could have been wearing. Let's see, why don't you put some hats on person number 2 and person number 3 to study it.
Well, they could have worn this hat.
Okay, 2 reds. Okay, so all right, maybe I'll put them on. All right, so let's say it was 2 reds. Now, if person number 1 looked over and saw 2 reds, would person number 1 know what color hat they had?
No.
Why not?
Because it could be a red or a blue.
Could be a red or a blue. Okay, good. All right, what do you want to do next? What thing do you want to try next? Whoop, careful.
Well, we could put a blue and a red.
All right, a blue and a red. Great. So if person number 1 looks over and sees a blue and a red, will person number 1 know what color hat their hat is?
No.
Why not?
Because there's still a blue. But if they're wearing 2 blues,
Okay, if the person number 1 looked over and saw 2 blues, what would person number 1 realize?
his hat is red.
Hat had to be red, okay? So when person number 1 looked over and said, I don't know what color my hat is, what did person number 2 and person number 3 all of a sudden learn?
They didn't learn what color their hats
They
were.
didn't learn what color their hats were, but they did learn something.
They knew what color he had.
No? Well, they can see his hat.
Yeah.
So they already know what color his hat is. But when person number 1 said, I don't know what color my hat is, what did they learn? Because if it was 2 blues, person number 1 would have known he had a red hat. So when person number 1 said, I don't know what color my hat is, what do person number 2 and person number 3 know for sure?
It's not 2 blues.
It's not 2 blues. Right?
So one of them is not. So one of them has. Well,
one of them has to have what?
One of them has to have a red.
One of them has to have a red, and possibly both of them have a red.
Yeah.
Right?
Possibly.
Possibly they both have a red. Okay, now it gets tricky. Because then person number 2 says, I don't know what color my hat is. Now what could that mean? The only thing person number 2 and person number 3 know is they both don't have blue. Okay? So what can person number 2, when they look at person number 3, see?
Well, person number 3 could have a blue.
Okay, if person number 3 has a blue, what does person number 2 all of a sudden know?
He knows that his hat is red.
Knows that his hat is red. Why?
Because they don't have 2 blues.
Because they're not both blue. Right?
Yeah.
But person number 2 doesn't know what color hat he has. So what does that mean for person number 3?
That means for person number 3 that. Well,
remember, if person number 3's hat was blue, person number 2 would know.
It would have to be a red.
So person number 2 doesn't know, so that means person number 3's hat has to be red. Okay? Now what does person number 3 know now? When person number 1 says, I don't know, and person number 2 says, I don't know, what does person number 3 know?
That his hat is red.
That his hat is red. How about that? So person number 3 wins the prize.
I wonder what the prize is.
I don't know. Maybe it's one of these funny colored swords, whatever they're called.
Maybe it's a helmet.
Oh, maybe. Oh, wow. Maybe a really nice helmet. Maybe that's the prize. Okay, so how about that? So you have 3 people, and you have 3 red and 2 blue hats. And person number 1, 2, and 3 don't know what color their own hat is, but they can see the other people's hats. Actually, you can do this. You can even do it like this, by the way, if you want, where they're only facing one direction. And person number 1 can only see 2 and 3, and person number 2 can only see 3, and person number 3 can't see anybody. You can even do it that way. It still works, but we were doing the easier one, where they can all see their own hat, everyone else's hats except theirs. So person number 1 says, I don't know what color my hat is. And what we learn from that, doesn't seem like we learn much from that, right?
Yeah.
But what we do actually learn is they can't both have blue hats, 2 and 3. Because if they both had blue hats, then one would have to have a red hat, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then when person number 2 says, I don't know either what color hat I have, if person number 3 had a blue hat on, person number 2 knows they're not both blue, so person number 2 would have a red. So the only thing we learned when person number 2 said, I don't know, is that person 3 had a red hat. And who learned that?
And person number 3.
Person number 3 learned that. Actually, they all learned it, but person number 3 learned it, and person number 3 said, aha, I must have a red hat. So he went running around going, red hat, red hat, red hat, ah! How's that for a fun little logic puzzle?
Cool.
It's a little bit different than the one that you did on your test earlier today, but still kind of a neat one, right?
Yeah.
That's a famous one. It's called the 3 hat problem. All right, good job.